Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's 50-something. It's misty to cloudy. It's not raining. That's nice. Although the humidity is like 82 or something like that. So we're within a couple of digits of having probably 0.1 inch of rain. But so far we don't have that. The stuff that's on my mind, first of all, this personal stuff, which many of you who've written me or said something have been very supportive. A year ago, after my wife Holly was on the list for a transplant, one day we were sitting down and we were going to watch a movie on TV, and we got a call from Johns Hopkins saying that they had an A positive lung, and it was available, and did we want it? And that's been the most dramatic, certainly health thing that's happened to us this year. And when we went to the hospital, because we immediately said yes, because my wife was not, as is usually the case for someone who gets a transplant, she had not gone to the point of great pain and near death, if you will, which is often how these things move. And I thought that the strength that she had, having not gone through that, would be a plus. As it turns out, since she had such a difficult time in the first week, we thought two evenings we each believed she wasn't going to make it. She was going to die. And that made me think that it's lucky that she didn't go to that point, because she might not have had the energy as she did when the sedation seemed to wear off. She seemed to come back fighting. Now, coming back fighting meant she was still in the hospital. I don't know if it was 5.5, 6 weeks. It was a long time. And the fluids and the pumps and the pipes and everything else like that. Okay, it's a long way to say that we had this transplant, and that her lungs, as I talk to you today, are more than twice as strong as they were. And what she suffers, if that's a fair way to put it, are the side effects of the various medications she takes and the tests she takes. So she can have some tremors in her hand, she could have some imbalance and so forth, and it's not always predictable, it's not always consistent. But as I left the house, whatever number of minutes ago, Holly was on a treadmill and was going to walk for 20 minutes on that, and then she was going to go out and do the pigs. And this was something that was a real trial for her. So on a personal level, I want to thank all of you who wrote and cared and still write us friendly notes, encouraging us to have strength going forward, fighting any possible infection or rejection. Now, in the first year we haven't had it, but this is not something that you ever escape. Maybe it's not comparable to insulin or pain medication, but it's similar in the sense that you have to take certain drugs to anticipate infections and injections. And she's going to have a bronchoscopy on Monday, basically to see where she stands and if anything needs to be done. I say this to any of you who are thinking about transplants or being a donor. Obviously, being a donor is a very worthwhile thing that you can do, because you won't be using the organs anymore, or I won't be using the organs. But if you're a person who is going to have a transplant, you have to work with these teams, and I mean this in a good way, to analyze what all of your risks are. And there's no such thing as perfect. That is to say that we don't have the ideal. We're all at an age when we're doing these kinds of things that mean there's plenty of risk involved. And it does take a certain level of courage. But you have to believe, as we did, that the operation was necessary, because the decline in her lung function was dramatic over the last year or so before we had the operation. So I say that as on two levels. One is a public announcement to us folk on this channel, but also besides thanking you all, it's something that one should think of to consider. Having gone through it, if I reached a point where some organ or other could be donated and transplanted, I don't know if I could go through it for myself. I think as the caretaker, the love and connection that you have with a person is a different thing than what you might choose to do for yourself. But you don't choose that until you have to. So that's my wrap on that. There isn't a lot going on, and yet there's a couple of possibilities that we have to look at. Let's go to the DA in New York. Could make a decision on Monday. I continue to be in a wait and watch position, although it really does feel like this could be the real thing. Will it be? I don't know. Another thing has happened that's encouraging, and again, we wait and watch, and it is who's being summoned to the grand jury. Meadows, as the chief of staff for Trump, that's a significant summons because he's involved in so many things. He's not only a logical witness, he may have exposure himself. And of course, there have been rumors that he wasn't prosecuted for contempt of Congress because of various reasons, but one that escaped was maybe he's cooperating. It's possible. And it's not something you'd want to advertise for a variety of reasons, but it also might not be true. So we'll have to wait and see whether that's the case or not. We have a very interesting situation among lawyers. Back in Watergate, what I observed was there were two kinds of lawyers. There were the lawyers who did things wrong, and John Dean was in that mess. And then there were the lawyers who prosecuted those lawyers who did wrong. And there were some really substantial people. And down in the Southern District of New York, there were several who came from that office who formed the team of prosecutors. And so we had access to what they thought, and it was exciting to see such lawyers. But now we're focusing on those lawyers who are in a jam. You know, is Meadows in a jam? Is Corcoran, who's going to talk about the documents he had and what conversations he had with the lawyer who signed an attestation that we have now produced everything of the documents that you asked for. But we have him in the grand jury, and the interesting question is, because it seems impossible to believe that everybody believed that all the documents had been produced. Now, of course, if the assurance came from Trump and they pin him, then is the lawyer free? And apparently the woman who signed the attestation that all the documents were produced, well, what about her? And the answer to that question is, since she had doubts at the outset, she had not been exposed to representations, that is, that she could test the credibility of, it seems, to know if when Corcoran asked her to sign this document, that Corcoran was doing the right thing. So where is Corcoran? Well, Corcoran's in a situation in which, instead of just something going on that he knew about, it feels like he participated if something was going on. The something being, yeah, here are all the documents, and he knew they weren't all the documents. But he said it anyhow because they'd go away. And he may have said something like that to, I believe it's Bibbs, who was the woman who signed the assurance to the Department of Justice. So you have them obstructing an investigation. You have false statements in connection with the investigation. And the question is, what did Corcoran know? When did he know it? What did Trump say to him? What did he say to the woman? What other conversations and documents that he has to produce will put him in exposure? In other words, we're back at the John Dean side of this. But John Dean figured out in the Nixon case, after saying there was a cancer on the presidency, he figured out that he was going to go forward and he was going to tell the full story. Now, I don't want to make him sound like an angel, because he knew he was being made the scapegoat, and he was going to be blamed with everything, having done the, quote, investigation that they were going to say should have found that he had an important role in what he was doing with tapes and things like that. So Corcoran best represents the corresponding advance in the Trump case as compared to John Dean, who did cooperate in the Nixon case. So what does that mean? Well, I talked to an old friend today, who's a prosecutor, who said Jack Smith could be pretty firm in these things. And my concern, of course, is will Garland, who has never seen a case against Trump that he could fully support, will he give the green light if Jack Smith remains faithful to his role and gets the goods on these people and connects it to Trump? So, again, our position has to be wait and see. And there are things that could indicate that something may happen. But we've had so many times when we've been BS to death about what this or that is going to be, that I have hope, I don't have faith, and we'll have a good idea this week, I think, if there are either leaks about whether Corcoran, the lawyer, talking about the Florida case, took the fifth or not, which I think I would have advised him to do, because it'd be treacherous to talk about this if you're even close to the hypothetical that I posed. And I think Bragg is going to be encouraged to fight. I hope that's my reading of his character. He's going to be encouraged to fight to disprove those that say he struck out when he should have followed the recommendations of the former district attorney, Vance, to go forward and indict Trump. So I think he feels that pressure from one side of his being. And on the other side, we have to hope the assistant DAs who are working the case with him, that they're not shrinking from the opportunity to be historic in a case that writes itself. So those are kinds of things I see on my mind. We'll have a better idea. Did I say tomorrow, like tomorrow's Monday? Excuse me. Monday. And in the meantime, I enjoy this kind of soggy day with soggy air. Holly and I don't know, we might have a sip of champagne to celebrate the year, but we'll be apprehensive about the tests on Monday involving a bronchoscopy. And then Sunday is the day that Holly had the actual operation a year ago, 8 or 9 hours. So I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank you for helping us with your words and prayers, and some with food and other kindness. And I hope that we see a turn toward democracy in the events involving the prosecutions of Trump and his corrupt minions, lawyers and all. So all the best. Here I am in my my trees, my cathedral of trees. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.